He was once an evil being who was killed by a woman. However, he was brought back to life, became the strongest of all, and forced every creature to kneel before him. Our story begins with a gruesome scene as a young girl brutally takes the life of a man. In his final moments, the dying boy reveals that he is Tomokui Kanata, the central figure of this story. Realizing that death is unavoidable, he accepts that nothing matters anymore. The moment the fatal strike lands, everything suddenly changes. Instead of fading away, he opens his eyes and finds himself staring at a hideous creature. At least, that is how it appears to him at first. A goblin known as Jay soon explains that he will now be called Goburo. Before long, Kanata comes to a shocking realization. He has been reborn as a goblin. Several days passed, and Goburo notices how rapidly goblins grow. After only a few nights of sleep, his body has already developed significantly. From this point onward, he becomes known as Ro. On the 4th day of his new life, Jay provides him with one final meal before informing him that it is time to begin hunting. Once he finishes eating, Ro leaves the cave and immediately understands that this world is nothing like the one he came from. Not long afterward, he meets another goblin named Gokichi. Over the following days, the two work together, hunting creatures and sharing whatever food they manage to catch. During these hunts, Ro discovers that he is gradually acquiring new abilities. This triggers memories from his previous life, where he possessed a unique power known as absorption. That ability allowed him to consume almost anything and inherit the powers of whatever he ate. Although death caused him to lose nearly all of those abilities, one remained behind, and it proves incredibly useful while hunting. On the 6th day, a female goblin suddenly approaches them. After learning that they have been hunting horned rabbits, she becomes extremely impressed and introduces herself as GMI. To Ro, defeating such creatures seems ordinary, but GMI explains that horned rabbits recently killed several goblins. Hearing that, Ro invites her to join their next hunt, and she happily accepts the offer. Unfortunately, heavy rain arrives the following day, forcing Ro to cancel the planned hunt. Since going outside is no longer an option, he decides to inspect the tribe's storage area instead. While exploring, he discovers several human women being kept captive. Even so, he chooses not to interfere because he already understands the reason they are being held there. A short while later, Jay visits him and reveals that Ro is approaching level 100. He explains that reaching that level allows goblins to evolve and that only 1 out of every 100 manages to achieve a superior form. Before leaving, Jay hints that Ro will soon witness what a fully evolved goblin looks like. The next day finally brings another hunting trip. After defeating several monsters, the group takes a break. GMI becomes emotional as she enjoys a proper meal for the first time, explaining that she previously survived mostly on fruit. Meanwhile, Ro takes a bite from the head of a snake and instantly unlocks numerous new abilities. From this, he concludes that the creature must have possessed a remarkably high level. Several days later, while exploring unfamiliar territory, the group accidentally discovers a cave. Inside, they are immediately attacked by a swarm of bat-like monsters. Despite the sudden ambush, they manage to survive and eliminate several of the creatures. After consuming one of them, Ro gains even more abilities. At the same time, he notices signs that other starving goblins are secretly observing them. The following night, Ro's enemy detection skill warns him of incoming danger. Moments later, several goblins from his own tribe launch an attack against him. Thanks to his superior abilities, Ro kills one of the attackers and easily defeats the rest. The next day, the group resumes hunting and successfully brings down an orc. While enjoying the excellent meal, Ro reflects on the betrayal that occurred the previous night. Once the hunt is finished, they return to the cave carrying all the prey they collected. Rather than keeping everything for themselves, Ro encourages the other goblins to eat as much as they want. As he watches them, he realizes that people from his former world rarely showed such generosity toward those in. That night, while he is asleep, mysterious messages begin appearing inside his mind. Each one announces the acquisition of a new ability. One notification appears so suddenly that Ro accepts it without reading the details. The skill he unknowingly receives is known as the Blessing of the Great God of Death and Origin. When morning arrives, Ro wakes up to discover that his body has undergone a dramatic transformation. His appearance now resembles the form he possessed in his previous life. At the same time, Gobichi, who will simply be called Kichi from now on, has also evolved. GMI is overwhelmed with excitement after seeing their new forms. Just then, Jay arrives and expresses his amazement that both of them managed to evolve despite being less than a month old. Soon afterward, Kichi decides that he wants to test his newfound strength and challenges Ro to a fight. Ro accepts without hesitation, and the two immediately begin battling. After an intense exchange, Ro emerges victorious. However, the moment the fight ends, he senses that something is drawing near. It does not take long for Ro to discover that Gonmi has been secretly observing the battle from a distance. Without wasting time, he orders her to retrieve the crossbow they built earlier. Not long afterward, the group spots a pack of savage wolves attacking several horned rabbits along with an orc. Seeing the perfect opportunity to measure their evolved strength, Ro and his companions rush directly into battle against the ferocious beast. Once the battle finally comes to an end, and every wolf has been defeated, Ro takes a bite from the alpha wolf and immediately gains several abilities related to leadership. Afterward, the group carries the wolves back to the cave and allows the other goblins to feast on the meat. Even so, Ro makes it clear that this arrangement will not last forever. He explains that they must eventually learn how to hunt for themselves because he has no intention of letting them rely on him forever. His goal is to make them capable of surviving on their own. Since most of the goblins lack hunting experience, they ask Ro to train them. He accepts without hesitation and even mentions that he can teach them weapon crafting if the need arises. The goblins are thrilled by the idea and begin looking up to him with great admiration. This reaction makes Ro wonder whether his recently acquired leadership abilities are influencing those around him. At the same time, Ro realizes that he has finally discovered what he wants to accomplish. In this world, by continuously consuming stronger creatures, he plans to grow more powerful and guide his race toward a better future. Several days later, both Ro and Kichi wake up to devastating news. The human women have died after accidentally ingesting a deadly poison that took their lives without warning. Following this incident, Ro spends the next several days training the goblins, while also continuing his own growth by consuming large amounts of food in search of additional abilities. Not long afterward, Ro and Kichi detect several goblins approaching their territory. Believing a battle is about to begin, Ro immediately prepares himself. However, Jay quickly explains that the arrivals are actually goblins who normally work outside the village, along with their parents. The newcomers are welcomed back, and it soon becomes apparent that they have brought additional human women with them. Ro learns that goblins possess extremely dominant genes, allowing them to reproduce even with members of other races. Displeased by the situation, Ro immediately requests custody of the women, explaining that he does not agree with kidnapping humans. His proposal, however, is met with strong opposition and quickly turns into a heated dispute. At that moment, two female goblins named Sei and Sato step forward. Sato proposes a simple solution. Let the leaders of both generations settle the matter through combat. Whoever emerges victorious will earn the right to decide the village's future. Both Ro and the older leader accept the challenge. The battle proves one-sided as Ro overwhelms his opponent with ease. During the fight, he showcases a web-based ability obtained from one of the creatures he previously. Sei and Sato are left stunned because they never imagined Ro could become so powerful in such a period of time. Following his victory, Ro officially becomes the village's new leader. Soon after securing his position, Ro meets with the captured women. He informs them that he has forbidden the goblins from laying a hand on them. He assures them that they are safe and promises to provide food, clothing, and everything else they need. Among them is a red-haired girl named Rubelia. Grateful for his protection, she thanks him and says that they are willing to help however they can. In response, Ro makes a simple request. He wants them to teach him everything they know about the human world. The women reveal that they were originally traveling merchants. While journeying through the region, they were attacked and captured by Ro's parents. Every man traveling with them was killed, leaving only the women alive. Recalling those events causes many of them to break down emotionally. Weeks pass, and the women gradually recover from their grief. They realize that dwelling on the past will not change what happened and begin adjusting to their new lives. Around this time, Ro introduces their individual profession. Mary specializes in blacksmithing and craftsmanship. Alma and Felicia are sisters, with one skilled in cooking and the other talented in tailoring. Spinel serves as an alchemist, while Rubelia possesses basic combat experience as a novice warrior. A few hours later, Ro is seen putting the goblins through intense training sessions. Many of them complain about how exhausting the exercises are, but Ro insists that such training is essential if they want to become effective hunters. Despite his efforts, not everyone approves of his leadership. Some goblins continue to question his method. Later that day, Ro participates in a friendly sparring session with Kichi. That same night, an unexpected problem arises. The former leader gathers several goblins and secretly attempts to approach the human women. Before they can act, Ro intercepts them and delivers a brutal beating. Soon afterward, GMI, Kichi, and several others arrive at the Ro orders everyone to gather and watch carefully. Determined to set an example, he mercilessly punishes the offenders until they are barely alive. The former leader receives the worst injuries and ultimately dies the following day. Through this incident, Ro sends a clear message to the entire village. Anyone who breaks the rules will face severe consequences. The next morning, Ro's group heads out to hunt a powerful creature known as a tricorn. The battle is difficult, but they eventually emerge victorious. After consuming the beast, Ro gains several additional abilities, including a healing skill and a powerful triple thrust attack. The goblins are amazed by the new powers he acquires. Later that night, Ro is resting when Rebelia unexpectedly climbs into bed beside him. However, when morning arrives, he wakes up to find that Ganmi spent the night there as well. Several days later, both Ro and Kichi are left speechless after learning that a goblin girl named Gobu has successfully evolved into a hobgoblin. Ro explains that Gobu has essentially become his personal carrier, helping him transport supplies and handle various tasks. He also reveals that duties within the village have been carefully assigned among his trusted companion. Kichi oversees the heavy assault force, while Ganmi commands the long-range fighters. Sato is responsible for the light combat division, and Gobue manages support work together with several other goblins. As for Sei, she remains the village's only magic user. Because there are no other mages available, forming a dedicated magic unit is impossible for now. Later that day, Ro leaves the village in the hands of his companions and ventures deeper into the forest. His objective is simple: find stronger prey to consume and gain additional abilities. Before long, he arrives near a lake and notices a creature wandering nearby. Wanting to test his magic, he casts a spell known as Magic Spear for the first time. The attack strikes true and kills the target instantly. Afterward, he continues toward the northern region of the forest. Along the way, he discovers a large amount of blood scattered across the ground. The sight immediately reminds him of a warning Jay gave him shortly after his rebirth. According to Jay, this area was home to a fearsome creature known as the Red Bear, a monster so powerful that entering its territory was considered suicidal. It does not take long for Ro to witness proof of that warning. He discovers the remains of a tricorn that had been effortlessly slaughtered. Despite the tricorn's impressive durability, it was completely overwhelmed. Before Ro can properly process the situation, the Red Bear suddenly appears directly in front of him. Most people would have chosen to flee without hesitation, but Ro has no intention of retreating. Summoning a magic spear, he immediately launches himself toward the monstrous beast. Meanwhile, back at the village, Gobu and Ganmi begin growing increasingly concerned. Night has already fallen, yet Ro still has not returned. At the battlefield, the Red Bear blocks Ro's attack by sacrificing one of its paws. Seeing an opening, Ro follows up with an axe strike, only to discover that the creature's hide is far tougher than he expected. The blow fails to cause meaningful damage. The monster quickly retaliates. Opening its mouth, it unleashes a stream of fire that severely burns Ro. After using his healing abilities to recover, he cannot help but think about how absurd the situation is. In his previous life, the idea of fighting a fire-breathing bear would have sounded ridiculous. Nevertheless, he knows there is no turning back. Accepting that injuries are unavoidable, he creates a magical shield and charges forward once more. During the clash, Ro successfully drives his sword into the creature's mouth. However, the victory is short-lived. The Red Bear counters with a devastating strike that launches him through the air and leaves him on the verge of death. Even so, Ro notices that the monster is suffering as well. His sword remains embedded deep inside its mouth, continuing to inflict damage. Refusing to give up, he drags himself back to his feet. More than anything, he wants to devour this powerful beast and claim whatever abilities it possesses. After an exhausting and brutal struggle, Ro finally succeeds in bringing down the Red Bear. The victory comes at a terrible cost, however, as he loses one of his upper limbs during the battle. While countless new abilities begin flooding into his mind, his body finally reaches its limit, causing him to lose consciousness. Several hours later, he awakens with overwhelming hunger. Without wasting time, he consumes part of the fallen Red Bear and immediately notices another transformation taking place. He has evolved yet again, and his appearance changes drastically. When Ro finally returns to the village, everyone is left speechless. His new form closely resembles that of an ogre. After hearing that Ro not only defeated but also consumed the Red Bear, Jay can hardly believe it. In an incredibly short period of time, Ro managed to kill the strongest creature living in the northern forest. Not long afterward, the girls become fascinated with his new appearance and constantly follow him around. Ro repeatedly has to reassure the human women that despite his new form, he is still the same person they knew before. Later, Ro visits Emery because his axe was badly damaged during the fight. The weapon had been bent out of shape, so Emery repairs it for him. During this time, Gonmi and Rebellia keep pinching him for reasons he cannot understand, leaving him thoroughly confused. While chatting with the sisters, Ro casually remarks that they would make wonderful wives someday. The comment immediately reveals the reason behind Gonmi and Rebellia's strange behavior. Both of them are clearly jealous. Ro continues handing out compliments, including one directed towards Snipple. By the end of the day, he has unintentionally earned the reputation of being the village's greatest heartbreaker. The following day, Ro resumes combat training alongside Kichi and several goblins. Unfortunately, he is forced to end the session early after nearly killing some of his own allies. He spends the rest of the time healing their injury, while Kichi watches the entire situation with complete disbelief. The remainder of the day passes peacefully as everyone focuses on their favorite activities. Several hours later, Ro returns and finds C reading a book. During their conversation, he mentions that Kichi has been behaving strangely in recent days. C suggests that the simplest solution is confront him directly and ask what is bothering him. The next day, Ro is relaxing inside his home when Gottmi suddenly rushes inside carrying a small creature in her arms. After examining it, Ro identifies the injured being as a carbuncle. Seeing its condition, he immediately begins treating its wound. Some time later, the creature finally regains consciousness and introduces herself as Elitana. Grateful for the help she received, she thanks Ro and explains that humans were responsible for her injury. During their conversation, Ro notices the gemstone embedded in her forehead and explains just how valuable it is. According to him, that single gem could potentially be worth 1 billion gold coin. The realization immediately worries Ro. Such a treasure would attract endless attention, and if word spreads, human adventurers would almost certainly begin searching for Elitana. Despite everything, Elitana suddenly drops to her knees and desperately begs Ro to stop the adventurers pursuing her. During their conversation, Ro learns more about her origins. She reveals that she was created by a legendary mage named Velvet. According to Elitana, her creator designed her specifically to guard a hidden treasure vault. Unfortunately, the adventurers who attacked her attempted to remove the precious gem embedded in her forehead. The damage they caused was so severe that her life would not last much longer. Hearing this, Ro immediately realizes that the secret vault may contain priceless artifacts and legendary treasures. Elitana then explains that Velvet despised humanity more than anything. For that reason, she would rather entrust his treasures to Ro and his companions than allow humans to claim them. Without hesitation, she offers to guide them directly to the vault. Ro immediately instructs everyone to prepare for departure. Before leaving, he asks Emery to bring the item she has been crafting. A moment later, she presents him with a spiritual stone knife and places it in his hand. Although Ro intends to confront the adventurers, he makes his intentions clear. He does not wish to kill them immediately and would prefer to resolve the situation through conversation. However, if they refuse to cooperate, he is fully prepared to eliminate them. Not long afterward, Ro and Gobue arrive at the destination. Upon seeing the opening Elitana created in the wall, Ro orders the others to remain concealed while he searches for the intruders alone. Soon, the adventurers finally appear. One of them attempts to approach while hidden through invisibility, but Ro immediately detects and stops him. Remaining calm, he offers them a chance to leave peacefully. He points out that slaughtering people and stealing treasure is hardly the noble behavior they claim to represent. Unfortunately, his warning falls on deaf ears. Rather than withdrawing, the adventurers launch a coordinated attack. As the battle begins, Ro notices that the spellcasters positioned in the rear possess several enchanted items. However, their overall strength is far below what he expected. One mage unleashes a spell powerful enough to decapitate an ordinary opponent, yet the attack fails to leave even the slightest mark on Ro. At that point, Ro's patience finally runs out. Meanwhile, the adventurers begin to realize the horrifying truth. They are confronting an opponent vastly stronger than anything they anticipated. The battle quickly turns into a massacre. After defeating every adventurer, Ro devours their bodies and acquires numerous new abilities. The group also confiscates all of their equipment, including a unique backpack capable of storing enormous quantities of items. Not content with merely taking it, Ro consumes the backpack itself. As a result, he gains the ability to summon a magical storage inventory whenever he wishes. Afterward, the group reaches the inner chamber where Velvet's remains rest among mountains of treasure. Elitana explains that her creator was a master spirit manipulator whose magical abilities were unrivaled. Hearing this, Rao remarks that Velvet must have been an extraordinary individual. With her duty finally fulfilled, Elitana says her final goodbye. Before their eyes, her body vanishes, leaving only the gemstone from her forehead behind. The gem falls directly into Rao's hands. Without hesitation, Rao consumes it and immediately acquires another powerful ability. He then orders everyone to gather every treasure they can find. Surprisingly, even after collecting everything inside the vault, his new storage ability still has more than enough space remaining. Before leaving, Rao decides that Velvet deserves a proper farewell. Rather than abandoning the body, he chooses to perform a respectful cremation. As the flames consume the remains, an unusual glove suddenly falls from the ashes. Curious, Rao picks it up and places it on his arm. Instantly, the glove expands and covers the entire limb. Along with granting numerous powerful abilities, it also becomes fully controllable. Most importantly, it serves as a perfect replacement for the arm he lost during his battle against the Red Bear. By the end of the day, the entire group celebrates both their successful expedition and the incredible fortune they obtained. The following day, Rao works alongside Emery to sort through the treasures and equipment recovered from the vault. Over the next several days, he distributes magical weapons among the 10 hobgoblins living within the village. For himself, Rao keeps a legendary weapon known as the Vermilion Galsenbai. The spear contains 3 legendary artifacts within it and is regarded as one of the kingdom's strongest weapons. Several days later, Rao organizes a ranking tournament to determine the hierarchy among the hobgoblins. His ultimate goal is to establish a powerful mercenary force, as his companions have grown far stronger than ordinary monsters. On the 41st day of his new life, Rao once again ventures beyond familiar territory in search of stronger prey and new opportunities. During his travels, he encounters a golden spider possessing an incredibly durable golden exoskeleton. After defeating and consuming it, he gains the ability to produce golden threads. These threads prove exceptionally useful and can be crafted into countless different items. Hours later, Rao discovers a mysterious magical tree inhabited by members of the Dryad race. He soon learns that these creatures survive by seducing intelligent males and feeding on them. He also discovers that every member of the race is female and possesses extraordinary beauty. Before long, one of the Dryads approaches him. Her name is Dorian. As Dorian continuously touches and teases him, Rao becomes increasingly nervous. Her charm proves difficult to resist, and eventually he gives in to her advances instead of pulling away. In response, Rao unconsciously releases the full extent of his power. A massive golden aura erupts around him, illuminating the area with overwhelming energy. The sight leaves Dorian utterly captivated. At that moment, the two clearly begin an intimate relationship, but that is something that cannot be shown. Rao explains that they spent many hours together, and by the end of it, Dorian had become completely fascinated with him. She tells him that he is welcome to return whenever he wishes. As a result, Rao leaves feeling extremely confident. Later, Rao arrives at a small lake near a waterfall, where he is suddenly surrounded by numerous lizard men. He defeats them all and absorbs their abilities. The following day, Rao explains that he discovered 2 goblins with great potential to become mages. He immediately brings them to sea so that she can begin training them. During the following days, all of the girls in the village appear upset with Rao. Confused by their behavior, he goes to Spinel to ask what is wrong. Spinel tells him that he is surprisingly clueless. The girls are jealous because they notice several love marks on his neck and realize that he had spent time with someone outside the village. Spinel says she understands why the girls feel that way, because Rao is very charming. Unexpectedly, she leans forward and kisses him on the cheek. Rao becomes extremely nervous. However, Gonmi happens to be nearby and becomes furious after witnessing. She immediately jumps on Rao and demands the same kind of affection. At the same time, the other girls reveal themselves and admit that they feel the same way. Rao chooses not to explain what happens next, but it is strongly implied that he spends intimate time with all of them. Several hours later, Rao notices that his enemy detection ability has improved significantly. Soon afterward, he senses the presence of several individuals. When he goes outside, he encounters a group of skeptical elves. The elves demand that the goblin village pay a fee because they are supposedly protecting the area from humans. Rao refuses immediately. He sees no reason to rely on the elves for protection. He grabs one of them by the neck and summons his legendary spear. The weapon creates hundreds of spears within a 100-meter radius. all aimed directly at the elves. Ro warns them never to bother the village again. He declares that if humans ever attack, he will personally deal with the threat himself. After hearing those words, the elves have no choice but to retreat. The next day, Ro ventures into the forest again and hunts gray slimes. By consuming them, he gains physical resistance and a skill called automission. This ability allows him to use his blood to create a small creature that shares its vision with him. Ro realizes that this skill is extremely useful because he can use the creature as a living camera to watch over the village. As expected, the elves eventually return, this time with much larger numbers. After releasing a powerful roar that paralyzes them, Ro traps all of them using his web ability. He asks why they came back, and the leader explains that it is because of their pride and their leader, Kirio. Ro informs them that from now on they should act as if their leader is dead. He then forces them to participate in friendly battles against one another. Several hours later, Ro explains that 26 elves fought and 6 of them lost. The defeated elves are devoured, allowing Ro to unlock even more abilities. Later, while speaking with several elf women, Jay arrives. He behaves quite shamelessly and comments on how beautiful the elves are while eagerly waiting for nightfall. Meanwhile, Kichi successfully defeats a bear and reaches level 100, meaning he is now able to evolve. Back with Ro, he is talking with Gonmi when Kichi suddenly arrives. His appearance has changed dramatically. His body is now completely red and he has developed horns on his head. Ro explains that Kichi's red skin comes from the blessing of a fire demigod, while his iron-like durability comes from the blessing of a war demigod. Excited by his evolution, Kichi tells Ro that they have not fought since Ro became an ogre. Now that he has evolved as well, he wants another friendly match. The two immediately begin fighting. After exchanging numerous blows, Ro remains clearly superior. However, he admits that Kichi has become extremely powerful and can now be considered a true rival. Later, while Ro is exhausted and walking back to bed, he encounters a mysterious being. The entity tells him that it has a gift for him and grants him a mysterious power. The next day, several goblins successfully evolve into hobgoblin. In addition, many of them show talent for using magic. Snipple points out that one of them has the potential to become a cleric. The goblin introduces himself as Gobui and promises Ro that he will work hard to improve so that he can heal as many injured people as possible. Shortly afterward, Ro turns his attention to C and asks her about her new appearance. It turns out that she also evolved when she woke up that morning and has now become a type of half-lord sorcerer. The girl becomes very excited and asks Ro to come outside so they can test the power she now possesses. She unleashes a powerful fire attack against several trees and proudly mentions that she still has plenty of strength left. She believes she could cast many more spells without any difficulty. Ro thinks that her next evolution will likely turn her into a full lord. Because of this, he gives her special equipment that will help her level up much faster. Sato is very happy for her friend and hopes that she will evolve soon as well. Ro explains that the first month of a goblin's life is extremely important. Depending on how they develop during that period, they can grow into powerful warriors. He also theorizes that everyone is evolving so quickly because of his influence. Several hours later, Ro and Kichi return home and encounter a group of goblins. The goblins admit that they are tired of constantly trying to reach Ro's level and failing. They are also frustrated by watching younger goblins progress faster than they do. As a result, they decide to leave the village. Rather than stopping them, Ro wishes them good luck and even gives them a mithril knife, a highly valuable magical metal. Several days later, while hunting, Ro spots an orc carrying the body of a dead human. He decides to kill the orc because the human, despite being dead, possessed a very interesting ability. After eating some of the human's flesh, Ro unlocks the special monster tamer skill. A few days later, Ro creates a set of communication devices similar to headphones. After distributing them, he speaks to GMI while she is far away. Everyone is left completely amazed because they have never seen technology like this before. In another scene, Gobue successfully stuns a tricorn. This gives Ro an idea. Using the monster tamer ability he acquired, he successfully tames the tricorn. Ro also explains that he managed to tame a bear that now fights alongside him. In addition, he turned the leader of the Black Wolves into something like a pet, and it now serves as the girl's bodyguard. The following day, Ro watches Rebelia fighting several kobolds. She defeats them very easily, and Ro compliments her on how much she has improved since she was once very poor in combat. While they are eating together, Rebelia suddenly mentions that she believes she has learned a new ability. She immediately chases down a creature and defeats it with ease. Ro then explains that she has become a noir soldier and must regularly consume monsters or she will eventually die. Several hours later, Gobue speaks with Ro and reports that several goblins have returned injured after encounters with humans. Ro concludes that a war between humans and elves will likely begin very soon. On the 60th day since Ro's birth, he wakes up and senses the presence of many monsters nearby. Soon, a large group of kobolds is seen fleeing from magical skeleton. Ro orders GMI's group to attack with arrows, but the attacks prove ineffective. Kichi becomes very nervous. He instructs everyone to fight without weapon and advance directly toward the enemy. Ro charges into battle and defeats numerous skeletons within moments. Eventually, he reaches and destroys the strongest skeleton, the one responsible for summoning all the others. After consuming its skull, Ro gains the ability to summon undead creatures, along with several other extremely powerful abilities. Shortly afterward, the kobolds kneel before Ro. They explain that they had discovered Velvet's treasure chamber and accidentally awakened the superior skeleton guarding it. With nowhere else to go, they sought refuge with Ro. The kobolds thank him for saving them, and Ro reflects on how much more interesting his group has become with so many different races joining together. The next morning, Ro heads out hunting with Kichi. While traveling, they spot a group of 10 human warriors moving with great urgency. The two decide to follow them. While hiding behind some bushes, Ro uses his web ability to secretly listen to their conversation. They discover that the humans are planning to kidnap the daughter of the elf chief when she returns from a festival. The plan is possible because there is an infiltrator among the elves. Several hours later, the elves return with the chief's daughter, a girl named Mael. The humans launch their ambush, but just before they can take her away, Ro appears. Using his magical threads, he captures all of the attackers. Afterward, Ro brings both Mael and the captured humans back to his home. One day later, the prisoners reveal that their army plans to attack within approximately 20 days. After extracting all the information he needs, Ro devours them. Soon afterward, Mael wakes up and becomes terrified when she sees Ro. She initially believes that he kidnapped her. At that moment, she suddenly reveals her beautiful wings. After hearing the truth, Mael begins crying while complaining to Ro about the entire situation. However, Ro explains that he has no intention of getting involved in the conflict between humans and elves. He tells Mael that he will return her to her village the next day and that she should focus on dealing with the infiltrator among her people. The following day, while traveling back to her village, Ro asks about the wings she revealed earlier. Mael explains that only the highest-ranking elves possess wings. She also displays them again, admitting that she is still not fully accustomed to them. After several hours of walking, they finally arrive at the village. However, multiple guards immediately aim their weapons at them. Mael quickly explains that these are the people who saved her life, and they are escorted to meet the village chief. There, they meet a man named Seba. Seba thanks Ro for saving his daughter and asks whether he would like a reward. Ro does not refuse the offer, so Seba orders Mael to bring him a certain item. Mael returns with a magical family treasure known as the Fail Node Bow. Seba is clearly reluctant to part with it because it is an extremely rare heirloom. However, because Ro understands its value, he decides to share all the information he obtained from the captured human. As a result, Seba and Ro form an alliance. Ro later explains that Seba sends them a large amount of mithril equipment. In return, Ro's village provides numerous spirit stone knives and shovels. Before Ro leaves, Seba mentions that his elite troops have been missing for 20 days, clearly referring to the people Ro is secretly holding captive in his village. Naturally, Ro pretends to know nothing about the matter. As a farewell gift, Seba also provides a large supply of medicine and alcohol. This greatly excites Ro, who tells Seba to contact him anytime assistance. The next morning, Ro wakes up to find Ganmi beside him. She is now far more beautiful than before because she has evolved along with 8 other hobgoblins. Several hours later, it becomes clear that Ganmi has gained the ability to charm men and control large amounts of ice. Soon afterward, Gogu appears and reveals that she has evolved as well. She has become an earth warrior capable of reading the terrain and identifying weak points. Sato also appears, having evolved into a blood half-lord. Ro explains that special markings appear on their bodies whenever they evolve. A short time later, Ro informs the kobolds, elves, and goblins that a war between humans and elves is about to begin, and that they may be called upon at any moment. Because of this, everyone must remain prepared. He distributes communication devices and instructs them to wear them in their ears. However, the elf women living in the village refuse because wearing objects on their ears is considered a taboo among their people. Ro eventually convinces them to cooperate. During the following days, Ro trains both the kobolds and the elves simultaneously. Thanks to his undead summoning ability, he can create opponents for them to practice against. He also explains that undead creatures cannot remain under direct sunlight because they are purified almost instantly. Later, Ro leads everyone to the area where the kobolds used to live, since they are now members of his village. He proudly notes that the Goblin settlement has grown to more than 100 inhabitants. While the kobolds hunt wolves, Ro explains that they usually hunt in packs because they are highly intelligent when it comes to planning strategy. After several hours, the group successfully hunts numerous monsters throughout the forest. That evening, Ro visits Emery and discovers that she has forged a much stronger and more durable axe to replace the one damaged during the battle with the Red Bear. Both Ro and Emery are extremely pleased with the result. The following day, Ro has a conversation with Kichi about Gobue. Kichi admits that he is completely in love with her, especially now that she possesses powerful earth ability. Desperate for advice, he asks Ro for help. Ro immediately tells him that he should confess his feelings that very night. He explains that if he does it sooner, the pain will be much less severe if he gets rejected. He also asks Kichi to report the results the following day. Later that night, Kichi meets with Gobue and confesses his love to her. The confession leaves Gobue completely shocked. Just as she is about to give her answer, the story shifts to the next day. Ro is training with Kichi, who appears incredibly happy. Kichi then reveals that his confession was a complete success. Ro also explains that Gobu had previously gone to Gonmi for advice because she was in love with Kichi as well. Several days later, Ro went hunting with the group and managed to catch several new types of insects. After consuming them, he discovered that he had unlocked an armor shell ability. He immediately tested it, and a type of armor formed across his entire body. The group struck it with an axe to test its durability, but the armor proved extremely tough, and could even regenerate itself. However, Ro admitted that he did not like how it looked. When he deactivated the ability, he ended up completely naked in front of his friends because summoning the armor required sacrificing his clothes. Later, Ro discovered that one of the abilities gained from the insects granted him wings. However, he explained that they were very difficult to use. The following day, Ro met with Rubelia, who invited him to train with her. Ro reflected on how much stronger she had become. When he first met her, she seemed like a harmless little puppy, but now she was as formidable as a fierce Doberman. Afterward, Ro visited Emery. She informed him that they were developing a rapid-fire crossbow. Since the project was a success, Ro requested that they begin producing them in large number. On the 70th day since Ro's birth, several elves arrived at the village. They informed him that the human army had begun marching through the forest of Kondarun. Because the army was extremely large, they had come to request his assistance. The elf explained that Siba would reward him generously for the mission. Ro accepted the request and handed the elf a communication bracelet, asking him to deliver it to Siba. After they left, Ro created several creatures using his blood and sent them throughout the forest so he could monitor the entire area. Soon afterward, Ro gathered everyone and told them to prepare because they would now become mercenary. The group became extremely excited, and Ro announced that their organization would be called Parabellum. The next day, Ro and his allies mobilized after the small blood clones he created discovered the location of the human camp. When they arrived, they noticed a massive barrier protecting the human. Using his new arm, Ro amplified a spell through a special crossbow-like weapon and successfully shattered the barrier. At the same time, Gobu created an earth barrier to seal off the escape routes. Si and Gobu unleashed powerful magical attacks, while Ro summoned numerous skeletons to join the battle. Although they defeated most of the knights, several heroes soon appeared. Ro immediately noticed a woman who appeared to be the commander. She also recognized that Ro was leading the opposing force and used enhancement magic to rush toward him. Just as she was about to thrust her sword at him, Ro effortlessly sent her flying without even moving. Afterward, Ro challenged her to a one-on-one duel. The woman began charging a powerful lightning attack through her sword. Meanwhile, Ro's team was completely overwhelming the enemy. Through various manipulation spells, they caused the human soldiers to attack one another. At the same time, Sato used her blood magic to create multiple sword-shaped chains from the blood spilled on the battlefield. In short, the human forces were being completely dominated by Ro's group. Returning to Ro's battle, the commander finally managed to strike him with her sword. However, the attack caused absolutely no damage. Moments later, one of the human mages cast a spell that summoned a powerful white flame dragon. The dragon charged directly toward both the commander and Ro. At that moment, it became clear that the commander intended to sacrifice herself in order to defeat him. The mage released the spell, but because Ro wanted to ensure victory, he summoned multiple first-tier shields. The shields easily blocked the white flame dragon. As a result, Ro won the battle. Afterward, Ro explains that he spared the surviving human. Several hours later, the group celebrated their victory together with the elves. Later, Ro visited the prison cells maintained by the elves and discovered several captured humans. There, he met the commander of the Kingdom of Stern, a woman named Teresa, along with one of her companions. Teresa became extremely nervous because she assumed Ro had come to do something to her and her companion. Sometime later, the three were sitting together as Ro had managed to obtain a great deal of information. He then shared the information with Siba. According to Ro, the humans planned to launch attacks from multiple directions. As a result, the next day they moved ahead of the enemy route and prepared numerous traps. Soon afterward, approximately 500 soldiers were seen advancing toward the village. Ro noted that among them were around 100 mages in addition to the knights. At that moment, Ro gave the order and his companions immediately blocked the road by bringing down a line of trees. In addition, they launched enchanted boulders that immediately crushed many knights. At the same time, Gottmi and the other archers began firing on the enemy. However, the knights quickly devised a strategy and used the large rocks as cover. Noticing that the battle had reached a stalemate, Ro ordered Kichi to capture the enemy leader. Kichi immediately charged forward, blocking attacks as he advanced. After a few moments, he successfully knocked the knight commander off his horse. The two began fighting in close combat, but Kichi had to hold back because they wanted to capture the knight alive. Ro observed that even while Kichi was restraining himself, the knight was still a very skilled fighter. He realized that such a person could be very useful. A short time later, Ro and Kichi celebrated after successfully knocking out the knight and winning the battle. As expected, after consuming the defeated knight, Ro unlocked many new abilities. Later, while Kichi and Ro were discussing the battle, Gonmi approached Ro and directly told him that she wanted to have a child with him. Without hesitation, Ro accepted her proposal. The next day, the group of prisoners was being held alongside Therese. At that point, a flashback revealed a conversation Ro had with the knight commander. The commander explained that the princess had contracted a rare disease with an extremely high fatality rate. The princess was supposed to marry the future emperor of Kirika. In response, the king ordered healers throughout the kingdom to search for a cure. Eventually, they discovered that the elves possessed a remedy. As expected, human greed led directly to war. Ro understands this very well because he himself was human in his previous life. In another scene, the group is working inside a mine. Suddenly, Kichi breaks through one of the walls, causing a large amount of hot water to burst out. The rest of the group is called over, and Ro realizes that they have just discovered a natural hot spring. Soon afterward, everyone is shown relaxing and enjoying the hot spring. The following day, Ro organizes a training exercise between the goblins and the prisoner. Gottmi and Sei each take command of one side. Ro notes that both girls are excellent leaders. Meanwhile, the leader of the knights, whose name is Steel, complains that he is tired of fighting skeletons and challenges Ro to a hand-to-hand duel. Ro accepts the challenge and strengthens Steel's body beforehand because, without doing so, Steel might die during the fight. Steel immediately charges at him, but as expected, Ro completely overwhelms him. Afterward, Ro heals Steel's injuries. Steel then requests a sparring match with Kichi as well. The girls are impressed by him because, despite being an ordinary human, he is remarkably strong. Later, while everyone is eating together, Steel and Ro have a conversation. Steel admits that he enjoys being around Ro's group. He explains that there are demi-humans where he comes from, and that he actually gets along better with Ro's community than with the nobles of his own kingdom. According to Steel, the nobles care only about themselves. He then compliments Ro, saying that seeing so many races living together peacefully proves that Ro is an outstanding. Unexpectedly, Steel stands up seriously and announces that he wants to abandon his position as an imperial knight and serve Ro instead. Ro senses that the young man is sincere and removes the prisoner collar from him. The next day, Ro appoints Steel as Rubelia's instructor in martial arts and combat technique. He tells Rubelia to learn everything she can from him. Several days later, Ro and Siba manage to capture several more humans. Ro asks Siba about the medicine that the humans have been pursuing. Siba explains that it is actually the same medicine he gave Ro earlier. According to elf laws, they are forbidden from giving it directly to humans. However, there is no rule preventing them from giving it to an ogre like Ro. Ro immediately takes out the medicine and drinks some of it. After doing so, he unlocks the abilities Rapid Regeneration and Blood Remedy. Curious about the effects, Ro makes a small cut on his finger and gives a drop of his blood to one of the injured prisoners. To his surprise, the human instantly recovers and all of his wounds are completely healed. This result shocks Ro because a single drop of blood was enough to restore everything. He can only imagine what would happen if someone drank even more of it. A few days later, Ro explains that despite losing the previous battle, the humans refused to give up and continued launching attacks. In response, he throws his spear and wipes out most of the gathered knights, securing another victory against the human forces. The following day, Ro arrives at the elf village together with Rubelia and Teresa. Because the elves deeply dislike humans, everyone in the village immediately stares at them the moment they arrive. Shortly afterward, Siba arrives with his daughter, and together they bring a banquet for the five of them to enjoy. During the meal, Siba explains that he plans to deploy all of his elite troops to finally put an end to the war. The rest of the day is spent discussing strategies and making plans. While returning home, Therese tells Ro that she has now sworn loyalty to him. However, she asks him for one favor, to provide the medicine needed to save the princess. Ro realizes that having humans owe him a favor could be very beneficial. However, he also explains that this world is ruled by 5 great gods. Because of the blessings he possesses, his involvement could easily trigger a religious conflict. Since Ro carries the blessings of both the great god of death and the god of origin, if he suddenly appears with a miraculous cure, it could spark an entirely new conflict. Because of this, he tells Therese that he will search for a possible solution. Before dawn the next day, the elves and Ro's army observe a military camp. According to their information, this is the final camp they must attack. Since it contains around 2,000 soldiers, they must proceed carefully. Ro explains that he sent one of his clones the previous night and gathered important information. It appears that a hero has arrived at the camp. Ro remembers Teresa explaining that these heroes are among the 8 strongest heroes in the kingdom. They possess divine blessings that grant them tremendous power and allow them to strengthen their allies. Back at the battlefield, Ro summons a large number of skeletons. One of the girls points out that sunrise is approaching and worries that the skeletons will be purified by sunlight. However, as the skeleton army begins its assault, the sun rises. Ro immediately covers them with a special liquid. The coating acts like a protective layer that shields them from sunlight, allowing them to continue fighting. At the same time, Ro launches an attack against the remaining knights. After nearly all of the knights are defeated, a man named Flippo arrives. Flippo is the hero assigned to the knight camp, and he possesses the ability to control plague. He immediately declares that Ro will be his next opponent. As Ro studies him, he notices a change in Flippo's eyes and realizes that he possesses the blessing of the insect god. Flippo then takes out several containers filled with larvae. He throws them onto the bodies of fallen soldiers, and the corpses suddenly rise and transform into insect-like creatures. The creatures charge at Ro but are defeated with ease. With his childish attitude, Flippo confidently announces that he will simply strengthen his creation. Soon, Ro begins having more difficulty dealing with the enhanced monster. Flippo then summons a gigantic creature named Arting. The monster attacks Ro relentlessly and eventually traps him within its massive jaws. After crushing him and injecting poison into his body, Ro falls to the ground badly injured. At that moment, Flippo believes that he is finally defeated. However, when he looks down, Ro is nowhere to be seen. Flippo is immediately forced to dodge several attacks launched by Ro. He becomes extremely nervous because no one should have survived Arting's attack. In response, Flippo takes out another container and reveals what he calls his secret trump card. While formally introducing himself to Ro, he is suddenly attacked, forcing him to activate his backup plan. Magical bindings seize the body of one of his knights, who had already been transformed into an insect. Flippo absorbs the creature into himself, creating an insect-like armor and weapon around his body. He immediately charges at Ro. Despite the transformation, Ro is far stronger and sends him flying with a single blow. Ro then charges his lightning spear and launches it to finish Flippo off in midair. Flippo barely manages to evade the attack in time. Ro is surprised that Flippo was able to dodge and counterattack while airborne. In response, Ro summons his own insect exoskeleton and takes the battle into the sky. There, he dodges several attacks before landing a powerful strike that sends Flippo crashing back to the ground. Meanwhile, Ro's companions finish defeating the remaining knights. At that moment, GMI suddenly gets a bad feeling and rushes toward Ro. Back on the battlefield, Flippo proposes a truce. Ro refuses because he has no intention of letting him go. Flippo responds by declaring that he will escape no matter what. He abandons his insect armor and immediately flees from the battlefield, Ro attempts to pursue him, but the empty insect body left behind attacks him and slows him down. At that moment, Gottmi arrives, worried about Ro's condition. Ro tells her that Flippo managed to escape. However, he also reveals that he secretly sent one of his clones after Flippo, using a stealth ability. The clone quickly reached the location where the heir to the Empire was staying and communicated with him through its connection to Ro. The prince was initially terrified, but Ro calmed him down by secretly handing over the elves' medicine. Ro explained that he did not want to kill any more knights of the Empire and asked the prince to bring the conflict to an end once and for all. After delivering that message, the clone disappeared. The prince immediately informed his allies that they needed to withdraw because they had successfully obtained the elves' medicine. Several hours later, Ro reflected that everything had been part of a calculated strategy. If he had killed the prince at that moment, it would have triggered a much larger war against the Empire. Not long afterward, the group prepared their belongings and returned home because the war had finally ended. Later that night, the villagers gathered to honor those who had fallen during the conflict. Ro revealed that 30 people had died in the war. Filled with sadness, everyone said their final goodbyes by cremating the body. The next morning, Ro woke up and found a girl named Fu sleeping beside him. Her behavior seemed very strange as she appeared to have developed feelings for him and spent her time watching him sleep with an almost obsessive fascination. A little later, Ro met with Gobui and discovered that he had evolved into a holy half-lord. This evolution occurred while he was healing numerous wounded people. Ro also explained that Gobui had gained a powerful ability called Shell Field, which created extremely durable shields. It took Ro nearly 20 strikes to break through them. At the same time, Fu continued behaving oddly because of her recent evolution. Ro explained that before becoming a wool, she had consumed rotten zombie flesh. Her unusual behavior became even more intense, prompting Ro to leave immediately. While walking away, he encountered a girl named Gimi. She had evolved into a Dodemeki, a race capable of mastering witchcraft. The girl now possessed numerous eyes, and Ro explained that with her remote vision and observation abilities, she could become an excellent spy capable of gathering valuable information. Ro also noted that several hobgoblins had evolved into ogres just like him. Meanwhile, the kobolds evolved into kobold bushes, giving them a far more human-like appearance. Their leader introduced himself as Akikaset. At this point, Ro jokes that the people in this world have incredibly strange names, especially since their names often change whenever they evolve. To avoid confusion, everyone continues calling them by the names they have used since the beginning. In a separate scene, Jay explains that every true name is completely unique. Because of this, revealing one's real name is extremely dangerous. If an enemy learns a person's true name, they can potentially curse them and bring about their downfall. Back with Ro, he begins thinking about what to do with the prisoner. At that moment, GMI steps forward and informs them that they are free to leave. However, if they choose to remain in the village, they must first complete a probation period. Immediately, a group of young men becomes rebellious and complains that they do not like taking orders. One of them proposes fighting the leader. If they win, they will take command of the mercenary. Ro calmly reveals that he is the leader. After seeing that he is an ogre, the challengers become overconfident. The first opponent, a man named Ai, summons a sword and confidently claims that Ro will regret facing. At the same time, a girl named Fuki joins the attack. The two launch a combined assault, but Ro effortlessly stops it with a single strike, shattering their confidence instantly. Afterward, everyone who challenged him ends up completely humiliated. Later, while Ro is speaking with a girl, a beast man named Apem suddenly lands a punch powerful enough to send him flying. As expected, Ro immediately recovers and counters with a blow that leaves Apem seriously injured. Ro then notices that the final challenger, a half-vampire, is attempting to flirt with GMI. This makes Ro visibly jealous, and he quickly defeats him as well. Many of the challengers ultimately decide to remain in the village. They immediately begin training under Ro's guidance. After leaving them to train with Kichi, Ro visits Emery and introduces several new members who happen to be blacksmiths. The rest of the day is spent practicing new spells. The following day, Ro explains that he has decided to improve the hot spring area. His main goal is to turn it into a business and eventually invite the Elven Chief to visit. Several days later, Ro meets the new brothers, who present him with a warhammer. They explain that giving such a gift is a traditional sign of gratitude and friendship. That afternoon, Ro ventures alone into the forest and encounters Dorian once again. Ro explains that he has come regarding a request she made earlier. However, Dorian insists on receiving some affection first. When Ro eventually returns home, the girls immediately notice numerous kiss marks on him and become upset. The following morning, Ro orders everyone in the village to start their own garden. It is then revealed that Dorian's request had been for fruit and vegetable seeds. As a result, everyone immediately gets to work. Several days later, many of the individuals who had been on probation decide to leave the village. In addition, Ro explains that he released the knights who had been held prisoner from the Empire. However, Gottmi first placed them under her charm so that they could serve as spies within the kingdom. Now that the war had completely ended, Siba invited Ro and the girls to a banquet in the elf village. There, Male performed a traditional elven dance to celebrate the completion of Ro's 3rd month since birth. Afterward, they returned to their village. Gobui informed Ro that their crystals had run out, but Ro still had several extras thanks to the mage Velvet. In honor of Velvet, Ro consumed one of the crystals and managed to unlock several new abilities. In another scene, Ro begins working on a new experiment. He takes the bones of skeletons and combines them with the substance he uses to create his clones. Several hours later, he proudly presents his new creation to the girls, a skeletal centipede-like construct. However, Ro designed it more like a vehicle than a monster. He then reminds the human girls he intends to take them to the city as he had promised. They are given the choice to stay there or return to the village with him. The girls explain that they have become very comfortable living in the village and know they would be welcomed back without any problem. Several days later, Ro organizes a celebration for the new village members who had completed their probation period. Not long afterward, he gathers everyone together because he intends to travel to the destination the human girls were originally heading toward. The group quickly understands the plan and prepares for the journey. A week later, they finally arrive at the fortified city of Tri. As they had been warned, less than 40% of the city's population consists of demi-humans. As expected, the guards immediately stop Ro because they find it suspicious that an ogre is traveling with humans, especially while driving such a strange and unusual vehicle. After the girls explain the situation, the guards allow them to enter. Later, Ro meets with all of the girls and admits that he would like them to return to the village with him. However, he emphasizes that the decision must be theirs alone. Soon afterward, Ro and Rubelia head to the Adventurers Guild to sell several items. A little later, Ro uses magic to transform himself into a human. His goal is to explore the city and gather information. As soon as he enters an alley, several men surround him. As expected, Ro quickly defeats them all. While there, he overhears a group of people discussing a man who attempted to bribe them. It turns out that the princess has been kidnapped. At that moment, a young man named Shai is introduced. He draws his sword, but the criminals quickly overpower him and threaten to kill him. Just then, Ro appears and knocks out all of the bandits. Afterward, Ro gives Shai a new card that officially promotes his group as mercenary. After exchanging a few words, Ro leaves. Several hours later, Shai meets with Ro again and admits that he is deeply worried about the princess. Ro calmly tells him that he already knows where she is being held. Later that night, they arrive at the mansion of several nobles. After entering, they find the princess tied up inside. Ro concludes that the entire kidnapping was actually planned by the princess herself. After rescuing her, they set the mansion on fire. One of Ro's allies then uses a magical sphere to hypnotize Shai. Afterward, Shai is left behind with the princess. The following day, Ro returns to meet the girls because they must finally decide whether they want to return with him. To Ro's delight, they happily tell him that they have already prepared everything and intend to go back with him. Outside the house, the princess appears and introduces herself as Ruberia. She thanks Ro for saving her the previous night. Ruberia also knows that Ro leads a mercenary group, so she requests to hire his services as an escort to the capital city of Bel. Ro cannot help but notice the princess's charm. Even so, he initially refuses the request, arguing that she already has her own escort. Everyone then gathers to discuss the matter, but Shai continues insisting that Ro accept the job. He even offers a golden plaque worth a tremendous amount of money. After hearing that, the girls immediately begin encouraging Ro to accept the request as well. Unable to resist the pressure from everyone around him, Ro finally agrees to take the mission. A little later, the group meets with Shai as they prepare to continue their journey toward the capital. Ro asks where the princess's other escorts are, but it becomes clear that Ruberia ran away from them. Because of this, Ro warns her that he will not take responsibility if they find her and of kidnapping the princess. The group then resumes their journey. Along the way, they hunt several bison. After cooking and eating them, everyone is amazed by how delicious they taste. Ro also explains that he transformed his skeletal centipede into a wagon pulled by a bison. Throughout the trip, Rubiria proves to be quite mischievous. Her endless curiosity constantly puts her in dangerous situations. Several days later, Ro speaks with Shai, who asks to join his training set. Rubiria also appears and requests combat training. After thinking about it for a few moments, Ro agrees. That afternoon, while traveling in a carriage, the group discusses the best routes to continue their journey. However, Shai warns them to avoid the mountains because a powerful jade eagle lives there. The creature is considered a boss monster and possesses a sacred blessing. Instead of being discouraged, Ro becomes extremely excited and declares that they are going to hunt the eagle. Everyone is left completely shocked by his decision. Soon, they arrive at the mountains where Ro easily defeats several weaker eagle. A few hours later, he finally encounters the great jade eagle. After an hour passes, the others become worried and look outside. To their horror, they discover that one of Ro's arms has been severed. The group panics, but Ro calmly uses his threads to retrieve the severed limb. He then begins eating it, causing his missing arm to regenerate. Ro explains that the battle has actually been helping him train. He immediately activates his insect exoskeleton and uses his threads to capture the giant eagle. Pulling the creature toward himself, he finishes it off by slamming it into the ground. Afterward, Ro approaches the corpse and retrieves a spiritual stone from the beast. He explains that only 1 out of every 100 eagles possesses such a blessing stone, and that its value is high enough to purchase even a small nation. Soon afterward, the group cooks the jade eagle. When Ro tastes its meat, he is completely shocked by how good it is. As a result, he unlocks several new abilities, including 6 wings similar to those possessed by the eagle. A short time later, the princess asks why he always devours the creatures he defeats. The question reminds Ro of his previous life, when someone asked him the same thing. He replies that he does it so that no trace of hatred remains behind from the beings he defeats. After that conversation, the group continues traveling. Several hours later, they arrive at the town of Mason. The townspeople immediately become alarmed by Ro's presence. However, Rubiria reveals a royal insignia, instantly calming everyone down. Ro explains that later that day they are welcomed into the mayor's residence. They also enjoy the town's waterfall and hot springs. That night, the group decides to celebrate. When one of the men annoys Ganmi, she quickly beats him up. To calm everyone down, Ro brings out several barrels of beer and organizes a drinking competition. The next day, the group leaves Mason. Several hours later, Alma and Felicia begin complaining that they feel extremely tired. The following day, everyone is shocked to discover that both girls are pregnant with Ro's children. Even more surprising, their stomachs begin growing at an incredibly rapid rate. Using his communicator, Ro contacts Jay and learns that goblin children consume enormous amounts of nutrients from their mothers. Because Alma and Felicia are human, the effects are far more severe. Jay explains that they must remain extremely well fed, otherwise the unborn children could begin consuming their mothers from the inside. As the hours pass, the girls become weaker and weaker. With no other option available, Ro tears off one of his own limbs and feeds it to them. He explains that nothing currently contains more nutrients than his own flesh, even though he knows it will not be easy for them to eat it. He does everything he can to help. Later, the group arrives at a cave inhabited by several bears, which they quickly defeat. Using magic, Ro creates 2 beds for Alma and Felicia. As time passes, the girls suffer greatly because of the rapid growth of the babies. Ro continuously uses healing magic to reduce their pain. Eventually, Ro realizes that one of them is ready to give birth. Without hesitation, he prepares to deliver his child himself using healing magic and a scalpel he created. A little later, the mission proves to be a complete success. A healthy baby boy and baby girl are born, and both Felicia and Alma survive safely. Ro contacts Jay, who explains that the children appear to have been born as a mixed race. According to Jay, 1 out of every 1,000,000 births between a human and a goblin produces an exceptionally powerful hybrid with traits from both humans and other species. He also explains that such children often become targets because of the envy they inspire in others. However, Ro declares that if that day ever comes, he and everyone else around them will shower the children with love and support. It is also revealed that both babies were born holding gems in their hands, likely because Ro had consumed many creatures that possessed magical orbs. Ro names his daughter Oro and his son Argento. Acting as a responsible father, Ro promises the girls that he will never abandon them and that they will all become one family together. Sometime later, Ro leaves the cave to hunt and notices that the entire area is covered in snow. Soon, he spots a white deer that he immediately identifies as a boss-level creature. Ro prepares for battle, but the deer does not attack. Instead, it sheds its antlers and leaps away. Although Ro briefly considers eating the antlers, he decides to save them for his children and continues searching for other prey. After walking for a while, he encounters a group of humans fighting several ferocious beasts, along with a powerful boss monster. Ro watches the battle and realizes that the humans are actually quite strong because they managed to defeat several of the creatures. However, the boss monster begins charging an extremely powerful. At that moment, Ro intervenes by casting a spell that splits the attack into numerous arrows of light, instantly killing the creature. The reason he interferes is because he was interested in fighting the humans himself. After thinking about it, however, he realizes that they probably would have defeated the monster without his help. Ro immediately changes his attitude and pretends to be nothing more than a servant sent by his master to retrieve its body. The humans have no issue with this explanation. After a brief conversation, Ro takes the monster and leaves. As the humans continue talking among themselves, one of them reveals that he possesses a forecast ability that allows him to see the future. According to his vision, if they had fought Ro, they would have been killed. While returning to the cave, Ro consumes the monster and unlocks a huge number of new abilities. When he arrives, he is amazed to discover that his children are already able to walk. Convinced that they are destined to be geniuses, Ro proudly watches them. The children are then fed the antlers from the white deer, causing the gems they carry to emit a brilliant light. Ro and Rubelia also taste a small fragment of the antlers and unlock several new abilities themselves. Later that night, Ro falls asleep and begins unlocking even more abilities, which are revealed as he sleeps. 2 days later, the group finally leaves the mountain. At this point, it becomes apparent that Spinel and Emery are now pregnant as well. Unlike before, everyone already knows how to handle the situation. After some time passes, both women successfully give birth. It is also revealed that Ro has evolved once again. Ro explains that the son he had with Emery is an ogre child named Nikawa. Meanwhile, the daughter he had with Spinel is a human girl named Nicola. At this point in the anime, it becomes clear that Ro has accumulated an incredible number of blessings. Soon afterward, the group realizes that they are very close to reaching their final destination. Several hours later, they arrive at a city called Purgatory. Since they are now close to the capital, Princess Ruberia disguises herself with a hat and a new outfit to avoid being recognized. Ro then tells the girls to rest at the inn while he heads to the Adventurers Guild to gather information. There, he discovers a free training arena. Many adventurers challenge him to a fight. However, Ro announces that anyone who can defeat Netsuki and the others will receive 5 silver plaques as a reward. The challengers immediately rush into battle. Despite the odds, Netsuki and his companions defeat every opponent. The adventurers are left in awe of their strength. Later, Ro goes shopping with the girls. During the trip, he purchases a magical item that functions much like a camera. He spends his time taking many pictures of his children. That night, Ro reflects on how close they are to reaching the capital. Because of all the recent births, they have not been able to stay in contact with the other groups. The next day, he contacts Sato and Sei. Both of them seem very happy, especially Sei, who has spent her time buying large numbers of magic books. On the other hand, Ro contacts GMI's group and they report that they have been gathering information throughout their journey. Ro then realizes that the last team he still needs to contact is Kichi's group. However, when he uses his vision ability, he suddenly sees what appears to be Kichi dying. Alarmed, he immediately tells Gottme that something strange is happening. The next day, Ro informs everyone that he plans to visit the Glypos Labyrinth because he wants to find out what happened to his companion. The group warns him to be careful since the vision may not be real. The princess tells him that a delay of 2 days will not be a problem, so the group immediately sets out. While traveling in the carriage, GMI quietly stares at a necklace. A flashback reveals that Ro gave her that necklace when they were younger, and seeing it fills her with nostalgia. GMI begins to cry because she feels useless. Unlike Ro, she has been unable to evolve, and she is also saddened by the fact that she cannot have children, clearly referring to having them with him. Being kind as always, Ro tells her that whether she has children or not, he will always see her the same way. The following day, the group arrives at the city of Lametoe. They immediately notice people running around in fear. Soon, they meet the leader of the Adventurers Guild and ask about Kichi. The guild leader explains that people believed Kichi and his group were dangerous, so several knights were sent to eliminate. Ro immediately heads toward the entrance of a dungeon. To his surprise, Kichi and Gobue emerge from inside. Kichi now resembles a minotaur, while Gobue has become a giant earth-based creature and is much larger than before. Ro asks what happened to them. Kichi explains that at the deepest level of the dungeon they encountered a strange monster known as the Soul Mirror. The creature could transform into the strongest opponent it had ever faced. After being badly beaten by the monster, Kichi evolved into a minotaur and defeated it with a single strike. Ro tells Kichi that they will stay in the city for the night and should go get something to eat. However, following his usual habit, Kichi asks for another friendly sparring match. Soon, the two meet inside a combat arena. Ro admits that Kichi has become extremely strong, especially since they have not fought for nearly a month. After exchanging a few words, the battle begins. Ro quickly notices that Kichi's strength, abilities, and durability have increased dramatically. Kichi launches a relentless assault, forcing Ro to use one of his secret techniques. Ro enhances his body and begins attacking with a skill called the Art of One Splendid Spears, launching dozens of magical spears toward Kichi. However, Kichi blocks the attack with powerful flames. He then leaps into the air to deliver a finishing blow. Ro immediately warns him to control his attack because many people are watching nearby. Despite the warning, the attack crashes into the center of the arena. Ro becomes furious because he can heal himself instantly, but everyone else around them cannot. He begins scolding Kichi and then launches a devastating punch that sends his friend flying. Several days later, the group finally arrives at the capital city of Osa. It is revealed that the sparring match with Kichi lasted for many hours. After the battle ended, Ro and the others said goodbye to Kichi and Gobue. Back in the present, Ro and the princess walk through the capital. Ro is amazed by how advanced the city is. Soon afterward, they arrive at the royal palace and are left speechless by its beauty. The princess thanks them for escorting her safely to the capital and promises that a great reward awaits them. She also invites them to stay overnight. That evening, everyone enjoys a grand banquet before going to sleep. The following day, the princess explains that the reward includes something special, specifically for Ro. She presents him with a special pass that allows him to enter the capital whenever he wishes, without having to go through lengthy inspection. As a joke, Ro asks how she can give such an important privilege to someone she barely knows. The princess replies that she has been observing him carefully the entire time. A few hours later, Shai says goodbye to the group because the princess is unable to come due to her royal escort. Before leaving, Ro tells Shai to keep training because they will meet again someday. After those final words, the group departs from the capital. However, Ro secretly leaves disguised clones throughout the city. A few days later, while traveling home, the group notices that GMI is still feeling down because she has only reached level 89 and has not been able to evolve yet. Ro reassures GMI that he will never leave her behind as long as she continues moving forward. Motivated by his words, she promises to do her best. The group then stops because Ro decides to train her immediately. He summons several giants and GMI begins fighting them at once. After defeating the giants, she collapses from exhaustion after completely running out of mana. Ro carries her back to the group. It soon becomes clear that Ro is also feeling weak. Spinel explains that he has been using far too much mana recently, which is why his condition has worsened. The next morning, Ro wakes up and is shocked to discover that Gottme has finally evolved. She has now become part of vampire nobility. In a sense, she can be considered Ro's wife, which makes him extremely happy to see her so cheerful. After several more days of traveling, the group finally returns to the forest where they were born. However, they are completely stunned to discover that their old cave has been transformed into a massive fortress. Several companions welcome them and explain that they arrived earlier and renovated the area. It is also revealed that Dorian has moved in with them, which immediately triggers Gottme's jealousy. Soon afterward, Kichi gives Ro a tour of the fortress and explains that many new creatures have joined their community. Their tour is interrupted when Gobui suddenly comes running toward them. He reports that Jay has become seriously ill. The group rushes to see him and discovers that his condition is indeed very severe. Jay explains that he knows his time is near because he is already an old goblin. Ro gathers his entire family, allowing Jay to meet all of Ro's children for the first time. The old goblin becomes emotional. Not long ago, he was carrying Ro in his arms, and now Ro has a large family of his own. Jay shares a few final words and says that he is proud to have watched Ro grow into a Lord Apostle. After speaking those words, the old goblin slowly closes his eyes and passes. Several hours later, everyone gathers to pay their respects. Ro delivers a speech and announces that to honor Jay's memory, they will hold a martial arts tournament to showcase everything they have learned during their journey. After some time, they successfully prepare a combat arena. Ro explains that everyone must fight without weapons. The matches begin, and after all the other contestants finish their battles, the final match comes down to Kichi and Ro. The two prepare themselves and begin fighting. As soon as the battle starts, both throw a punch at the same time, sending each other crashing to the ground. After the tournament ends and the final rankings are announced, Alma and Felicia arrive carrying a huge banquet for everyone to enjoy. Ro reflects on how much everyone has grown and how strong they have become. Later, in another scene, the princess contacts Ro through his communicator and tells him that she has a new mission. After a brief discussion, Ro has little choice but to accept because the reward she offers is extremely valuable. Several days later, Ro gathers all of his mercenaries and prepares them for a new journey toward Bel.